this 30-second ad played during the Super Bowl, you could scan this code and mint a free DigiDaigaku. And this has many asking, was it worth the $7 million for the Super Bowl ad in order to sell out a 10,000 piece collection? Whale Swoosh, who is one of the new researchers and director of threads over at Azuki Official, has a hot take on this, on how mass adoption actually works. And in this video, we're going to look at why it may have made sense to run a Super Bowl ad, and what LimitBreak, who is the gaming company that ran the ad, strategy is, versus how Whale Swoosh says actual NFT adoption works. This is a really awesome thread just about how to engage a community and bring people from Web 2 and beyond into the Web 3 space. Really by Trojan horsing it and making the content just great so that people want to engage with the content, and only later they find out that they're engaging with NFTs. That's ultimately where the space is likely headed. NFTs as a name will kind of fall to the background, just like MP3s did in the past, just like IMAP did for email. All of these technical terms are necessary as we define the parameters of a space, but as it comes to mass adoption, ultimately that technical jargon falls away in lieu of people just engaging with the technology, not even knowing that that's what they're doing. So let's see what Whale Swoosh has to say about this. He says, when we talk about mainstream adoption, we often think of the big events. Oh my God, Instagram introduces NFT avatars. Wow, a big Super Bowl ad. Let's fucking go. Justin Bieber bought a Bored Ape. These are obviously things when you see in the news, it triggers emotionally as, oh, NFTs are growing into a wider audience. But while these are all important steps, Whale Swoosh is not convinced that real mass adoption actually works in this way. The reason is simply that normies, people that don't know about NFTs or aren't active in Web3, hate NFTs way too much. And when I say hate, I mean it. And so for those of us who are trapped in a Web3 echo chamber and not in contact with normies in the real world that don't use crypto on a day-to-day, that might seem surprising that there's so much ill will directed towards crypto and NFTs. But Whale Swoosh continues, you don't believe me? Just read the comments under the announcement of the animation studio Golden Wolf recently acquired by Doodles. And I don't mean the comments from NFT bros with Doodles PFPs, but from normal people. And so this was a tweet thread where this animation studio announced that they were being acquired by the Doodles NFT brand. And if you scroll through, you can see that people that had been following Golden Wolf didn't particularly care for this. Speechless. What an effing betrayal. Where's the cult initiation meetups? Boo, y'all are better than this. Obviously, normie sentiment towards NFTs isn't quite where a lot of us think it is. And so the thread continues, but Whale, if we don't do something, nothing will ever change. And so this is a question to what does mass adoption by normies look like? And Whale says, true, but a Super Bowl ad doesn't help here. To make our space more attractive, we have to do it more subtly. Entering the stage, projects like Pudgy Penguins, VFriends, and Beans Official. So we're going to dive into these projects and look at how they're engaging a more general audience, and then we can look into the strategy that LimitBreak had for the Super Bowl ad and determine which one is going to be more effective at actually getting people to engage with a project and with Web3 as a whole. So Whale Swoosh says, Pudgy Penguins follows a different strategy than most NFT projects. Since LucaNets took over, they've been running a massive social media operation. If you're not following Pudgy Penguins on Instagram, you're missing out. So if we jump over to Instagram and look at Pudgy Penguins, we can see that they have 308,000 followers. And every day they are launching Pudgy Penguin branded content. It's kind of like life advice. So this one says, before you go to bed, remember this. Take a moment and realize just how lucky you are to live this life. If you have food in your fridge, a roof over your head, a phone in your hand, loved ones nearby, and clothes on your back, then you're pretty darn lucky. Comment amen if you're grateful. And we can see this has 21,000 likes. So we can argue whether content like this is trite or cliche, and is it the best way to build a brand? But clearly, Pudgy Penguins has found an audience with this type of content. And one thing that we know for certain is that when you create these carousel posts on Instagram like this, it definitely has a much larger reach. And so Pudgy Penguins is expanding the intellectual property of their NFT brand far beyond just branding themselves as an NFT project. You can actually see in the description here, they don't even mention the word NFT. And as we'll see, a lot of projects are moving in this direction where they're building a brand using NFTs as a way to capitalize that brand and ultimately galvanizing a community through digital ownership, and then continuing to expand into more IRL practices. Whale Swoosh continues, the cute penguins give life advice every day, and it's so fun to follow their posts. Maybe you can hate NFTs, but there's no way you can hate these cute and kind little penguins, right? So this says, stop regretting your dumb old mistakes. And it's featuring these characters, which whether you know about the NFT project or not, you start to fall in love or at least gain an affinity towards these characters, which is top of the funnel, like the first step towards getting people to engage with your brand further. Next, Whale Swoosh says VFriends goes a similar way. Following them is fun. When you find VFriends on Instagram, the first thing you think of is a cool brand that creates great content. That it's about NFTs doesn't matter. And so we can see the type of things that VFriends are posting on Instagram. Great things can happen when you adventure out of your comfort zone. So these projects are following more brand content guidelines rather than constant promotion of Web3. And in doing this, they are expanding their brand beyond the echo chamber of their particular blockchain or network or community. And there's a lot that NFT projects can learn from this type of engagement, because really the business that they're involved in, and we've heard Gary Vee talk about this many times, is branding. Personal branding, teaching their community what personal branding looks like so that their community can have a larger following, and then that community then has more collective power, but then building the brand collectively by really giving it a personality, right? And a feel, and creating a brand space, if you will, where people can raise their hand and say, yes, this is the type of content, visuals, and brand representation that I want to represent me. Whale Swoosh continues, even a look at their bio shows that it doesn't include terms like Web3 or even NFTs. Nobody cares anyway, and Gary Vee, who's one of the most high-profile social media players out there, understands that. So you can see 265,000 followers and no mention that VFriends is actually an NFT project, because really it's more than an NFT project. It is a brand, and as you grow your project as a brand, it creates so many more opportunities than if the only mechanism that you have for creating community or earning revenue is selling NFTs. A good brand can productize itself in 1,000+ different ways, and that's what you see with things like VFriends. NFTs are an interesting way to build a loyal and fervent community, but as the brand grows, it does not have to stay in that lane forever. Whale Swoosh continues, Azuki also seems to be going down this path with Beanzo Official, which is a new kind of derivative of the Azuki community. The latest tweets show that more emphasis will be placed on the brand building of the Azuki companion, introducing Jay and Jelly with a bang. Jay and Jelly are two mischievous beans who love to go on adventures, even though they like to squabble. They are inseparable and couldn't imagine life without one another. Tag your bestie below. So you can see, again, it's about creating community beyond, hey, we're an NFT project. Moving on in our thread, I talked to the Azuki team yesterday and they confirmed this theory. The goal is to build the intellectual property beyond the Web3 space with a well thought out social media strategy akin to intellectual properties like Gautama. I'm not familiar with this. Gautama tweets. So if we go over to Gautama tweets, so Gautama is their character is this yolk in the egg, and you can see they're also creating content that goes above and beyond simply Web3 memeing. This is really breaking into the general public where it is capitalizing on concepts and themes and memes really that anyone, whether you're in Web3 or not, can relate to. Whale Swoosh says, I think more brands will go this route in the future. Pudgy Penguins and VFriends show how it can work. Beans will go their own way. Bored Ape Yacht Club with the trial of Jimmy the Monkey also has the chance to address a different kind of audience. And so you can see with Yuga Labs and Bored Ape Yacht Club, they're taking their characters and what are they doing? They're creating content that can reach a larger audience. And of course, the NFT container was a really great way to garner attention, funding, PR, strong community. But ultimately, NFT projects have to learn to break out of that Web3 box and actually produce something of real world value. And that's why brand building is so important. And brand building, especially when you're going after a general population, is not about just pushing an NFT in someone's face. And as we'll see, this post is somewhat in rebellion to the Super Bowl ad that DigiDaigaku put out, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So Whale Swoosh continues, the intellectual properties and the social media strategy around those Web3 brands could become a kind of Trojan horse for mass adoption. This way, we can really onboard people and reduce the hate and skepticism towards Web3 in an organic way. If you enjoyed this thread, please consider giving the main tweet linked below a like and retweet. Thank you. So make sure that you click through. I've got the link in the description of this video to Whale Swoosh's tweet. Retweet that, like. Follow Whale Swoosh, an incredible person to follow for NFT news and research. I guess some of the pushback that I would give Whale Swoosh is that, of course, if you already have a community of 10,000 people that are financially invested in the success of the project, and you start pushing out brand-related feel-good content on social media, well, you have a huge community that can push that so that it gets massive algorithmic reach. But if you're just starting out and have no community and have not built the financial incentives that make it so that community wants to really promote the project, well, is the first step towards getting adoption of your own project to start making kitschy posts and developing your brand? Or do you need to actually find the people that are ready to invest in NFTs right now and then ultimately expand beyond that? But I guess what my question is, if you're trying to get early traction in your own project, not necessarily Web3 space as a whole, and I know that this post by Whale Swoosh is more about the industry as a whole, but for an individual project, is just starting to create great content the way that you build adoption? And would you even have the funding to bring on the team required to produce that content if you don't first go after an NFT audience? And is this something that plays into the strategy that LimitBreak had for their Super Bowl ad? Now, you would think when spending $7 million on a Super Bowl ad, you would want this QR code to take you to a really sticky, interesting landing page in order to convert people. But actually, funnily enough, it took people to Gabrielle or Gabe Layden's Twitter page. Now, when you landed on this page during the Super Bowl, the first people to enter into this competition were basically got to mint one of the new DigiDaigaku dragon eggs for free. And the question is, well, why would it be worthwhile for DigiDaiku to have a free mint where they're driving people from a $7 million Super Bowl ad? And if we run some of the numbers, maybe we can start to understand what their particular business model is. Now, I do agree with Whale Swoosh that this strategy was not necessarily the best way to get normies into Web3, but was it a good way to monetize what they are building in the DigiDaiku universe? To do that, we have to look at all of the different NFTs that LimitBreak has released under this business model. Now, their business model is that they're going to give away free NFTs, and that those NFTs will give you access to the video game universe that they're building. Now, as of this day, I could find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 collections that have given away for free. And the interesting thing is that you can see the floor price on the DigiDaiku Genesis collection is now 8.5 ETH, which is roughly $14,000. So what does that mean? Well, each of these collections has a 10% creator earning. And so if we look at the volume done over all of these NFTs, and remember, these were NFTs that people got for free, but they've still done hundreds and thousands in ETH volume. And so if we run those numbers, we see that just off of the free mints in creator royalties, the DigiDaiku team or collections have produced about $4.1 million. Now, it's too close to tell whether that volume ultimately pays for the Super Bowl ad, but given these collections haven't been released very long, we can assume that over time there will be enough trade volume on these collections to ultimately pay for a Super Bowl ad and more. Then, of course, once someone starts playing the game, there are in-game tokens and assets that can be purchased. And so onboarding a community into these games potentially has the ability to more than pay for the $7 million Super Bowl ad. And of course, there are people that are talking about this and debating whether or not it was an effective ad. I think time will tell, and ultimately I think from a financial perspective, it will work out for them because ultimately, as people get into the game and as the thousands of people that minted these free NFTs see their NFT value, potentially rise. I mean, right now, if you look at the free mint for DigiDaiku Genesis, getting an NFT for free and then having it be worth $14,000 is buzzworthy. It's something that you're probably going to tell your friends about. And even if you're a normie, it's like winning the lottery. Like, nobody wants to tell their friends that they're playing the lottery, but if you win, it's going to be really hard to not tell people about this. And so does that mean that these 862 people that were involved in this mint, are now massive advocates for DigiDaiku? And is that a good, worthy investment? Potentially. We can look at these collections and we can determine whether or not these floor prices are going to maintain themselves or if they're just going to ultimately sink to zero. But if the games are good and if there is enough in-game stickiness, which LimitBreak seems to understand to some extent how to capture a lowest common denominator audience, right? I mean, we can tell by just looking at this follow to win banner. I mean, anybody would say, oh, this is disgusting looking. However, when you look at digital marketing trends and especially print marketing trends, like really basic, almost ugly things like this, like it's almost like having a laundry sign upside down, they actually do convert at a pretty good level. And we can see 1 million followers on Gabe's account. Be interesting to know how many followers were on that account before the Super Bowl. However, the question is, are free mints, if they have enough utility on the back end, an interesting way to monetize a project? And whether the project was monetized or not, does running a Super Bowl ad create the hype and or attention in the news cycle or through the various PR cycles that ultimately makes this worth it. Because of course we can see that from the free mints and the secondary sale royalties, they've made about $4.1 million, and that those royalty fees will obviously continue. Now, does the publicity that they received from running a Super Bowl ad add to that hype and build the value of all of those free projects? Does it make more people want to get into the game? Does it create a scenario where people recognize that the free to own and play to earn model is something that, when you get in at the right time, can be lucrative, the way that we saw with Axie Affinity in the early days? Now, of course, we also saw Axie Affinity's price plummet, and so we are still, I think, as an industry, trying to figure out what are the sustainable models that make something like NFTs and video games more sustainable and less volatile, so that it feels comfortable for normies to actually engage. Nobody wants to buy an $800 NFT and then see it sink to $1, which is often what gets publicized. And so by giving the NFT away for free and by having in-game purchases, this could prove to be a model that ultimately is profitable for LimitBreak. And then the question becomes, just because something is profitable, is it the best way to get the most amount of people into Web3? What do you think? Do you think this was a waste of money on a Super Bowl ad and that the $7 million could have spent better? Do you agree that with Whale Swoosh that really the best way to grow a community and to acclimate and move people from Web 2 into Web 3 is to make it so that they don't even know that they're interacting with NFTs? Or is there always going to be the next level of early adopters? So if you're already in Web 3, you may have minted one of those DigiDaigaku NFTs from the Super Bowl ad, and now you're going to be in their game. If you've been thinking about potentially minting an NFT, or if you're a video game fanatic, and you love games like Final Fantasy and things like that, well, maybe having free entry into an exclusive access game gives you enough incentive to say, you know what, I'm going to make the jump into Web3 and figure out how to engage there. And so is constantly engaging that bleeding edge another interesting way to onboard people into the space, because you're basically capturing the low hanging fruit, and that low hanging fruit is going to be a moving target, right? As more and more people talk about NFTs, as it becomes normalized, as words like NFT and Web3 aren't even in people's branding, are there always going to be people that are ready to take the leap into Web3? I think so. And I'm not ready to take a hard stance that the $7 million Super Bowl ad was not a net positive, not only for LimitBreak, but for the space as a whole, because debate is good. And in any debate, the strongest 10% of either side are going to come to the debate. And so when you look on that post and you see people who absolutely hate NFTs, and then you see people who absolutely love NFTs, well, those are the two most extreme edges, and there is 80% of the audience that doesn't comment and is weighing each extreme to see when and where and if they want to engage with a Web3 brand. And so ultimately, I think that brands like Pudgy Penguins and VFriends and Beans, who are pushing content out in a way that is not so heavily weighted in, we are Web3, we are an NFT game, they benefit from people viewing these conversations that are being had at a larger level around Web3. And ultimately, a Super Bowl ad of any kind moves more people into the camp of Web3, and all NFT projects ultimately benefit from that attention. Now, I do agree that it's a combination, right? So LimitBreak has to deliver on their content, and so they have to deliver a great game. And if they don't, those NFTs are going to drop to nothing, and the community is going to abandon the project. But is just posting pleasant phrases on Instagram enough to grow a brand? initially it's enough to grow attention, but I don't think that you really get to Apple level unless you're producing a stellar product. And ultimately, the end goal of any brand or NFT project should be the utility on the back end. What are they actually delivering to their audience? And as Zeneca and Whale were talking about in a Twitter space last night, art is its own utility. Some people buy an NFT just because they like that art or just because they want to flex in that way on Twitter. And so art can be its own utility. But if we're talking about what are the next billion, trillion dollar brands, there needs to be more to the brand than just interesting or well-produced social media posts. Can it onboard new people? I think so. Does a Super Bowl ad like this onboard more people? I think that it likely will and does, and creates an interesting conversation in the meta that ultimately brings that bleeding edge closer to the space. And so both things I think can work, but I want to hear your opinion. Tell me in the comments, was this a worthy spend of $7 million? Are you going to engage with the DigiDaigaku universe because of this? And are you even the audience that they're going after? Or are you more likely to engage with a brand like this that is creating clever, compelling content? I'm John Ray with NF Treasure. Here on the NFT Threads YouTube channel, we try to highlight the best NFT threads from Twitter, bring them to YouTube so that you can listen in the gym, on a run, in your car, or wherever the mood strikes you. And of course, NF Treasure is a project that our community is building that allows any NFT project to print their product or create custom products around their brand. Because ultimately, NFT projects are brand building that need to point to a real world product, whether that be a TV show, a game, some kind of unique networking opportunity, or just I want to hang something on my wall and I like this art. That's one of the things that we help brands figure out. I'd love to chat with you more if you're an NFT project that's looking for a physical product loop. At NF Treasure, you can print your NFTs and earn crypto doing so. The Twitter link for the NF Treasure account is in the description, along with all the links we've gone through in this video. Until the next one, let us know what you think in the comments. Bye.